Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below. The commander of this deck is Magda, Brazen Outlaw. Magda is 1 and a red for a 2/1 legendary creature Dwarf Berserker. It has, other dwarves you control get +1/+0, and whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. It also has, sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, and put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. The aim of this deck is to get dwarves out, which will then tap to make treasures, and then use that to cheat out some big burly dragons to win the game. Magda can also get artifacts out of the deck, so we'll mention those as they come up. The first section of the deck is the Dwarves. We do want to get a good amount of these in the deck, however, despite being a tribe that goes back quite a long way in Magic, it hasn't always received the same amount of support as others. The best Dwarves for this deck will be the ones that can tap themselves. This will mean that it's nice and easy for us to make the treasure that we need to make the deck work. The standout of these Dwarves will be Dwarven Bloodboiler, as it lets us tap all of our Dwarves. There are some other Dwarves we can run so that we can make sure we have a decent number of them in the deck. Like the previous group, they do range in power level quite a bit, with Torbran, Thane of the Red Fell, and Dwarven Recruiter being the best Dwarves that don't tap themselves. Then of course there is the slightly more budget option that still might do a lot of work by running the full 7 dwarves. In total I'd recommend at least 16 dwarves in this deck, but if you're going down the more tribally route then you can definitely run more. The next section of the deck is some dedicated ways of tapping our dwarves. If you're running all of the dwarves that tap themselves, then you won't need as many of these. Then conversely, if you're running all of the 7 dwarves, then I would want to run more of these. Tap effects that fit into other categories will be the best for this deck, with things like Springleaf Drum, Paradise Mantle and Cultivator's Caravan doubling up as ramp, and Smuggler's Copter and the Weatherlight will help smooth out our draws. Then you also have Sky Sovereign Council Flagship that can count towards our removal. To help kickstart our dragon production, we're going to run some additional ways of creating treasure. We'll still be relying on Magda and the dwarves for the bulk of the treasure making, but having some additional treasure makers will help with the ramp of the deck and lead to some more explosive turns by cheating out some dragons with Magda. Talking of the dragons, let's go over some that we'll be running to win the game. I've listed here some of the best options available. I'd personally highly recommend Otava Hellkite and Lathlis Dragon Queen. The effects these have on the board will be immense, and generally speaking these are the ones that you want to tutor up first, as they're the best at giving us a full dragony board state, as they then get better for each other dragon that follows them. There are still plenty of dragons to come, but we'll go over them in the coming sections. We have already covered some spells that will draw us cards in earlier sections, but we want to run at least 8 dedicated bits of card draw in the deck to make sure we always have plenty of things to do. Being in red means that most of this will come in the form of looting style effects, but there are also some options that make treasure, which will be a nice bonus for the deck. I'm also a fan of these 2 dragons, as they also have the potential to completely refill our hand so we can keep casting spells throughout the game. And while not a dragon, Sandstone Oracle can also be cheated in by Magda, so it's something to consider. Even with all the treasure, we still want to run some dedicated ramp in the deck, as being able to hardcast our dragons will not be a bad thing. As we're in mono red, the bulk of the ramp will be on rocks, and I'd want to halve it so that half ramps us ahead with colourless mana, and then the other half taps for red mana. There's quite a lot of red pips in some of the dragons. When it comes to interaction, we're going to want to split it so that we have 4 bits on instants and sorceries and 4 bits on some of our dragons. This will then give us 8 bits in total and should mean we can get an even split of targeted removal and board wipes. Like the effects in some of the other categories, if it comes in the form of a flying beater, then all the better. The dragons we'll be cheating out will do a good job at winning us the game, but we'll also want to run a couple of cards that are dedicated just for this use. With all the treasure that we'll be making, along with the other artifacts, Hellkite Charger becomes a legitimate way of winning a game, and it's a good backup in case we're not able to swing through with our dragons. With those artifacts, something like Hellkite Igniter becomes very threatening as well, as it can buff its power multiple times equal to the number of artifacts that we control. The dragons are very good at hitting our opponents in the face, so what's better than doing that once a turn? It's doing it multiple times a turn. Cards like Hellkite Charger and Scourge of the Throne allow us to do this, which should take down our opponent's life totals nice and quickly. Being able to give our creatures haste as well will be very good in this deck. It will let a lot of our self-tapping dwarves tap themselves the turn they come in, and will also let our dragons be turned sideways straight away so they have an immediate effect. I also like Flame Shadow Conjuring in a deck like this, as being able to double up our dragons for a turn will be very good, and will mean we can throw the tokens into combat without any issue. We also want to run a couple of Haymakers. They don't fully synergize with the deck, but you can pull out a game out of nowhere by playing them. I'll put down below a link to a video going over Haymakers and why they're important in a commander deck, so check it out as these 2 feature. As we're a monocolour deck, we can also run a decent amount of utility lands. If you're running more artifacts, then something like Buried Ruin or Inventor's Fair will have a place, and with the dragons we can use Spinerock Knoll to cheat out something else good. After those effects, look for things that are good in the deck, like card draw from War Room and graveyard interaction with Scavenger Grounds. Finally, as we're a monocoloured deck, there is also a place for Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, as it should end up tapping for quite a bit of mana. It is a little bit pricey though, so if you don't have one then it's probably best to wait for the reprint. The next couple of deck techs on the channel will be focusing on the new commanders from Kaldheim, but after that we'll go back to viewers' requests. So if there's anything you want to see, please let us know down in the comments below, and subscribe so you see those videos when they come out. Thank you very much for watching.